The courtroom felt cold and quiet, almost intimidating. Tall wooden walls surrounded the room, making it seem even more serious. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, but it didn't do much to warm the air. People shifted nervously in their seats, waiting for the judge to arrive. Today was significant, and Sarah Johnson could sense it. Meet Sarah Johnson. Sarah was a single mom, juggling life with 2 young kids at home. She wore a simple dark blue shirt and black pants, her hair pulled back neatly. While she looked determined on the outside, inside, she felt a wave of nerves. Sarah had come to fight a parking ticket she believed was unfair. As a waitress, every dollar mattered to her. This ticket wasn't just an inconvenience. It could mean skipping meals for her children. Across the room, Judge Roberts sat waiting. He was a tall man in his 50s, with gray hair and a serious expression. Dressed in a long black robe, he exuded authority. When he walked in, his sharp gaze swept over everyone in the room. Known for being strict and often rude, he had a reputation for making people feel small, especially those he deemed less important. As the judge took his seat, he noticed Sarah. A look of disrespect crossed his face as he leaned over to whisper to the clerk about the frivolous cases he had to handle that day. His tone was unkind, and it was clear he didn't think much of people like Sarah. She felt the weight of his judgment, heat rising to her cheeks as embarrassment washed over her. To him, she was just another annoyance in his busy schedule. The tension in the room grew as the judge began calling cases one by one. When he finally called Sarah's name, her heart raced. She stood up and walked to the front, feeling every eye in the room on her. Judge Roberts raised an eyebrow, looking at her as if he couldn't believe she belonged there. "Miss Johnson, you're here to fight a parking ticket?" he asked, his voice dripping with doubt. It felt like an accusation, making her stomach twist. But Sarah knew she had to stand her ground. This wasn't just about the ticket. It was her moment to stand up for herself. She wanted to show that she deserved respect, just like everyone else in that room. With all eyes on her, Sarah took a deep breath, ready to speak her truth. Sarah stood in front of Judge Roberts, her heart racing with nerves. The judge was scanning the papers on his desk, his serious expression intimidating everyone in the courtroom. An uncomfortable silence filled the air as all eyes turned toward him, waiting for his words. "Miss Johnson, do you understand how serious this is?" he asked sharply, his tone cutting through the quiet. Sarah felt a sting from his words, but she knew she had to remain strong. "Yes, Your Honor," she replied, working hard to keep her voice steady. "But I think the ticket was given by mistake. I parked legally." Judge Roberts leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "You expect me to believe that? You're just a waitress. What do you know about the law?" His words were harsh and dismissive. Around the courtroom, some people shifted uncomfortably, sensing the unfairness in his comments. Despite feeling her face flush with embarrassment, Sarah stood tall. "I might not be a lawyer, but I know when something is wrong. I have the right to defend myself." With a wave of his hand, Judge Roberts showed his impatience. "Let's move on. Do you have any proof?" It was clear he had already made up his mind, and his tone made Sarah feel like she was wasting his time. Taking a deep breath, Sarah reached for her phone. "I took pictures of the sign where I parked. It shows that I parked legally." Her hands trembled slightly as she presented the photos to the judge. He glanced at the pictures and then back at her, his expression hardening. "These could be from any time. How do I know you didn't take these after you got the ticket?" His skepticism cut deep, but Sarah was determined not to give up. "Your Honor, I was there when I parked. I took these pictures right after. I was at the cafe nearby with my kids," she explained, trying to maintain her calm. Despite the pressure, Sarah felt a sense of solidarity from the people in the audience. She took a moment to collect her thoughts. "I understand, Your Honor. But I deserve to be treated fairly. This ticket affects my family. I will not back down." Judge Roberts' eyes narrowed as he listened, but there was a shift in his demeanor. He leaned forward slightly, perhaps starting to consider her words. Fairness. Do you really think that matters here? He glanced at the pictures and then back at her, his expression hardening. These could be from any time. How do I know you didn't take these after you got the ticket? His skepticism cut deep, but Sarah was determined not to give up. Your Honor, I was there when I parked. I took these pictures right after. I was at the cafe nearby with my kids, she explained, trying to maintain her calm. In that moment, Sarah caught sight of Lisa, the clerk, watching her with kindness. For a brief second, it felt like she had some support in this tense situation. But Judge Roberts remained focused on attacking her. Miss Johnson, this is not a show. Do you really think you can win this case with a few pictures? You are wasting my time, he said, his voice rising. Despite the pressure, Sarah felt a sense of solidarity from the people in the audience. She took a moment to collect her thoughts. I understand, Your Honor. But I deserve to be treated fairly. This ticket affects my family. I will not back down. Judge Roberts' eyes narrowed as he listened, but there was a shift in his demeanor. He leaned forward slightly, perhaps starting to consider her words. Fairness? Do you really think that matters here? Yes, it does, Sarah responded, feeling more confident. Everyone deserves fairness, no matter who they are. This ticket could mean I can't buy school supplies for my kids or food for our meals. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she pressed on. I just want a chance to tell my side of the story. For a moment, the judge paused, his expression softening. But then he quickly regained his stern demeanor. Enough of this. If you have no more proof, I will rule against you. At that moment, Sarah felt a surge of anger. She had fought too hard to be here, and she refused to let him belittle her. Your Honor, she said, her voice strong and clear. If you don't listen to me, you are choosing to ignore the truth. I deserve to be heard. Gasps filled the courtroom, and for the first time, Judge Roberts looked taken aback. Shock flickered across his face, and Sarah felt a rush of courage. Maybe she could make him understand. Be careful, Miss Johnson. I could hold you in contempt for speaking to me like that, he warned, his authority hanging in the air. I understand that, but I'm only asking for fairness, she replied, calm yet firm. I believe in the system, and I believe judges should listen to everyone. The tension in the room grew palpable as people shifted in their seats. Some nodded, showing they understood her plight. Fine, Judge Roberts said, though he sounded less harsh now. Let's see if you can prove your point. You have 5 minutes to make your case. Relief washed over Sarah. Thank you, Your Honor. She had a chance to present her side, and she wouldn't waste it. As she started to explain her situation, Sarah felt a newfound strength. She shared her story, not just about the ticket, but also about her struggles as a single mom working hard to provide for her children. She noticed some members of the audience nodding, showing they cared about her fight. Even though Judge Roberts stayed stern, Sarah sensed a change in the atmosphere. She was no longer just another face in the crowd. She was a voice that demanded to be heard. In that moment, she realized that she could stand up for herself and for others like her, no matter how daunting the challenge seemed. As Sarah spoke, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted. She gathered her courage and shared her story. Your Honor, she began, this ticket is very important to me. I am a single mom, and this fine could take away money that my kids need for school. Her voice was steady, and she could feel the eyes of the audience on her. Judge Roberts listened, but his expression remained serious. He was known for being powerful and intimidating, and many people in the room were clearly afraid of him. However, Sarah felt something different. The audience was engaged, and they seemed to support her. Miss Johnson, the judge said, his tone a bit softer but still firm. Do you really think your problems matter in this court? Yes, they do, Sarah replied, her heart racing. Everyone's situation matters. I deserve a chance to explain why this ticket is wrong. It's not just about the money, it's about fairness. She looked around the room and noticed several people nodding in agreement. This acknowledgement gave her strength. I took those pictures to show I wasn't wrong. I'm asking for a fair chance to share my story, she continued, her voice growing stronger. Just then, Lisa, the clerk, spoke up, surprising everyone. Your Honor, I was there when Miss Johnson parked. I saw her take the pictures right after she parked. She deserves to have her case heard fairly. The judge glanced at Lisa, clearly taken aback. He was not used to anyone challenging him, especially not someone like Sarah. After a moment, he looked back at Sarah. Very well, Miss Johnson. You may speak now, he said, but his voice still held an edge. Taking a deep breath, Sarah pressed on. I know judges have many cases to handle, but every case is important to the person involved. I just want my story to be heard. As she spoke, Sarah noticed the audience whispering to each other, showing their support. This encouraged her. She realized she wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for everyone who felt ignored. This ticket will affect my ability to provide for my children, Sarah continued, her voice calm yet passionate. If I lose this case, I will have less money for them. That's not just unfair, it's wrong. The judge shifted in his seat, and Sarah saw a flicker of discomfort in his eyes. He was used to being in control, but Sarah's determination was changing the dynamic. Miss Johnson, I don't usually allow this kind of talk in my courtroom, he said, his voice trembling slightly. But I must admit, you have made a good point. Feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on her, Sarah stepped forward. Your Honor, I'm not asking for special treatment. I just want to be treated like everyone else. This court should be a place where every voice matters, not just the loudest. The tension in the room thickened. Everyone was silent, hanging on the judge's next words. Sarah felt a mix of fear and hope, but she knew she had to keep going. Your Honor, I believe your job is to seek justice. It's not just about ruling, it's about understanding how your decisions affect people, she said, her voice steady and clear. Finally, Judge Roberts sighed, his demeanor shifting. I have seen many cases, but I have never had someone speak to me like this. He looked thoughtful, reflecting on his actions. Maybe I was too quick to judge. You deserve to be heard, Miss Johnson, he said slowly. I will review your case again with fresh eyes. I'll give you a fair chance. Relief flooded over Sarah, and she could hear the audience beginning to clap. She felt their support envelop her like a warm blanket. She had stood up for herself and made a difference. Judge Roberts raised his hand, asking for silence. I will take a short break to think about the evidence again, he announced. The audience quieted down, and Sarah's heart filled with pride. As she left the courtroom, she felt a sense of accomplishment. This was not just about the ticket anymore. It was about proving that everyone deserves a chance to be heard. Sarah had stood up for what was right and shown that true strength comes from believing in oneself. Every voice matters, she reminded herself, knowing that this experience would change her and those around her. Sarah had not only fought for her ticket, but also for every person who felt overlooked. She was a single mom, but today she felt like a warrior. After a short break, Judge Roberts returned to the courtroom, looking different, more thoughtful than before. I have thought about your case, Miss Johnson, he began, his tone softer. I am sorry for how I treated you before. I see now that your situation is important, and I will dismiss the ticket. A wave of relief washed over Sarah. The tension in the room melted away as the audience erupted into applause. Tears of joy filled her eyes. This moment felt like a victory, not just for her, but for everyone who had faced unfairness. Judge Roberts continued, "This experience has changed my view. I understand now that I need to listen more and judge less. I promise to be fair in the future." His admission surprised many people in the room. It's rare for a judge to admit they were wrong, and this act of humility showed significant growth. Sarah's bravery inspired not just the audience, but also Judge Roberts himself. Conversations began to swirl around the courtroom about the importance of fairness and justice for everyone, regardless of their background. Sarah's determination proved that one voice can make a real difference. As Sarah left the courtroom, she was greeted with hugs and congratulations from those who had supported her. "You did it," someone shouted. "You stood up for what was right." Sarah felt an immense sense of pride. She had fought not just for herself, but for others who felt powerless in similar situations. Walking away, she reflected on everything that had transpired. This wasn't just a victory over a parking ticket. It was a lesson in strength, resilience, and fairness. Sarah realized that standing up for oneself is not only about winning, it's about ensuring that everyone's voice is heard. In the aftermath, Judge Roberts took action to improve the courtroom environment. He started holding meetings to discuss fairness and explore ways to enhance the legal system. He wanted to learn from the people he served, ensuring that all voices were valued. Sarah's journey serves as a reminder that courage and determination can create meaningful change. Her fight teaches us that everyone deserves respect, and we must hold ourselves accountable for our actions. True justice comes from listening and understanding one another, creating a fairer society for all. In the end, Sarah didn't just win her case, she inspired a movement. Her story continues to resonate, proving that one person's courage can lead to a ripple effect of positive change in the world. As she said in her closing statement in court, "Every voice matters, and together we can make a difference."